just to say that in anticipation of COP26 coming to Glasgow, Glasgow Center for Population Health launched a small grant scheme last year. We wanted to support the production of creative outputs communicating the views of children and young people on the impacts of climate change on health and well-being. However, a couple of weeks after we launched the scheme, we went into lockdown. And while we didn't want to add to the workload of people working with young people, we thought it really important to provide young people an opportunity for positive, engaging activities that's unrelated to COVID-19. So we revised the scheme. We asked organizations to consider how they could proceed while still adhering to restrictions. And ultimately, we awarded 8 grants, and today is an opportunity to showcase the resulting work. We've been very impressed with the innovative work and also very impressed with how the organizations rose to the challenge of lockdown and school closures. We believe the combined outputs portray a powerful message from children and young people in Glasgow about the climate emergency. In the time we have this morning, you're not going to be able to see all 8. However, you'll briefly hear from each project, and then everyone will have the opportunity to see 4 of the outputs in the breakout sessions. All of the outputs will eventually be available on the GCPH website, and we plan on doing this in the very near future. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Russell, and a great overview there, particularly in the context as well. As I suppose everyone knows here, in many ways, COP26 here in Glasgow is going to be the moment when we look to recover from the COVID crisis, which we had not foreseen, to address once more the climate emergency, which we already knew to be looming over us. So it's a great pleasure, therefore, to introduce our next speaker, who is Councillor Anna Richardson, the City Convener for Sustainability and Carbon Reduction, to tell you more about the context in which the city has declared a climate emergency and its work on that. Over to you, Anna.
Climate change has been discussed, researched, campaigned about for decades. And yet something very particular has changed over recent years, and that's seeing children and young people really lead and take ownership of this issue. And quite rightly so, we take care of the planet for the generations that come after us, and that simply hasn't been done well enough by us and by those who came before us. I've been leading on sustainability in Glasgow City Council since 2017. So I watched the youth climate strikes unfold in George Square, outside our offices, and the relentlessness with which climate was suddenly in the news and on the agenda. And I can confidently say that something has changed in this city. Of course, we've declared a climate emergency, but that alone wasn't enough. So we're now finalising a climate emergency plan that will set out the steps that we will take to achieve a carbon neutral Glasgow by 2030. So, for example, we'll build more bus and cycle lanes, make it easier to charge your electric vehicles, plant more trees, heat buildings in lower carbon ways, increase recycling, reduce waste, and encourage more planet-friendly diets, to name but a few. It's a huge challenge ahead, and we can't do it alone. The council will play its part, but it's also up to businesses, organisations, and the people of Glasgow to take action as well. And climate change can seem like an impossibly tough crisis to fix. It's going to require all of us to commit to living differently and to supporting the many changes that need to be made. But I think we can be optimistic too. Glasgow's emissions have been dropping, and we met our 2020 target well ahead of schedule. So that puts us in a good place to now look towards 2030. And we've been seeing work happen on the ground despite the lockdowns of the past year. We've been building kilometres of new cycle lanes so that when we can all travel more freely again, we will have city streets that are safer for us all. And we've begun work on a new woodland to the south of the city, as well as planting thousands of extra spring bulbs and making Queen's Park a dedicated pollinator park to encourage more biodiversity. So these projects today are hugely important in bringing the message about climate to new audiences, by sharing what needs to be done and, more importantly, why. And I think these projects will tell the story far better than I can about why we have to take action right now. I feel a huge responsibility to ensure that we make progress as swiftly as possible, to ensure that Glasgow becomes an even better, healthier, greener city to grow up in and build a life in. We're listening to young people, and we know that you're expecting us not to let you down. And I was directly involved in one of the projects that we'll hear about today from the Brunswick Centre. During our interview, I asked if young people have faith in our generation to get this right for them. The answer, which I'll paraphrase, was, "You're doing okay, but it's the next generation who really know what they're doing. They'll fix it. So I think the future is definitely in safe hands. And I realise what strange times we're in. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and yet the focus of this work has been on an altogether bigger crisis that looms over all of us. I think that can overwhelm us all sometimes, but let's take heart from what we've learned from the pandemic. Humans can do things differently. They can work together. They can change their lives really quickly to protect themselves and other people. Most importantly of all, they can act fast when it's required. As life begins to go back to some kind of normality, let's take that energy and determination and turn all of our attention to the climate action we must take. So as I said, thank you to GCPH for inviting me along and for initiating this project. And thanks especially to everyone who's put so much effort into these incredible pieces of work. I hope you go out there and inspire your friends, your family and your communities the way you have me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, and a real note of hope and optimism within the overall context of the climate emergency to set us off to hear more about the projects now. And thanks especially to Russell and Anna for the brevity of your remarks, because we've saved a few minutes to give over to our projects. That's fantastic. We're now going to hear some brief descriptions of the projects in really alphabetical order, starting with the Brunswick Centre. And I will say, I know it's a challenge to be asked to do something in just 2 or 3 minutes. So we'll try to be charitable, but please also try to, roughly speaking, keep to time in order not to take it from the next person in line. But we're now going to get to hear about the projects, each in turn. And so I want first to introduce from the Brunswick Centre, Ashton Colvin. Over to you, Ashton.
Hiya, I'm Ashton. So again, I'm from the Brunswick Centre. I'm a senior youth worker that works with the children. So for the past year, we've been working on a climate change project. It's been the youth committee who's been doing it. So we've had about 10 children take part in this. They've interviewed 6 local politicians and councillors to get their views and opinions on what they think about climate change. At the beginning, the kids done their research to actually learn what climate change was and what they felt as a group that they think had to improve. So through the past couple of weeks and months, they've been doing different interviews. The interviews have lasted over an hour long, with about 12 questions to councillors. Some of the kids got a bit carried away and got a wee bit bored of the councillors, but it was really good. They really enjoyed it, and I think the councillors enjoyed it too. Anne Richardson was one of the councillors that kids interviewed, and the kids loved it. And from this, Anne Richardson's asked if she can come up and meet the kids, and that's also what some of the other councils have asked after lockdown eases. So today we'll show you a clip of some of the work we've done. Obviously the thing's about 6 hours long and we've had to put it down to 10 minutes. So it's really only kind of one question per councillor. But it's good to see the kids. And from this, it's made the kids lead on to new projects. They're now beginning to do a youth forum in the local area because they feel that they should have a say in the local politicians and in their local area. So this project has grew leaps and bounds since we first started it. And yeah, it's been really good. So that's really as much as I've got to say about that now until the video.
Thank you, Ashton. You saw the chat function there from Anna Richardson. They asked tough questions, they were brilliant, and they're engaging in a good, robust local democracy, which sets us on a good course for the future too. Thanks, Ashton. And we're on to our next project now, which is Eco-Drama, and I'm asking Emily Reid to speak now, please.
Hi, thank you. So Future Calling is a new digital arts and climate change project which was delivered by Eco-Drama with 160 S1 pupils at Bocklear Academy during lockdown 1 in May, June 2020. It was led by a team of 2, myself and artist Ben Malley, with support from the geography and global studies teacher Ruth Bone at the school. So Future Calling addressed young people's responses to the climate emergency through online discussion, visioning exercises, drama games, nature activities, arts and media, to creatively reconfigure climate change as a symptom of much bigger issues around the way in which we relate to each other and the natural world. Pupils were invited to attend weekly sessions with Ben, and he provided creative and outdoor learning tasks for the pupils to undertake before and after each session. Ben created a film which acted as a provocation, and this was shown to pupils at the start of the project, filmed in an underground bunker that he had created. And it told the story of a future world where humans have not made the necessary changes to avert climate destruction. Although we initially presented a dystopian future, the film and the creative process engaged and empowered the young people to realise that they have the autonomy and power to create an alternative future, and that change can be made now. In response, they recorded their own visionary future messages. And despite the strangeness of leading such a huge project in isolation, the young people tuned in, engaged, and did amazingly. It's been a real boost of hope to hear the courage and eloquence in the messages that they sent. In total, we received 19 films, 2 poems, and 3 creative written tasks. And once received, Ben, with his many talents, worked these into a final film, which is found on the Ecodrama website, and we'll be sharing that later on during the 10-minute session. And we are exploring avenues to showcase this film in the lead up to COP26.
Thank you so much, Emily. What a wonderful story of using the arts to release the inner creativity of the young people, and especially with sci-fi as well, as to give them an idea of that future. 19 films, poems, and creative installations. Wonderful stories. Thank you, Emily. We're next on to Govern Help, and I'm asking Viv Sawyers to speak next.
I'm Viv Sawyers. I'm the Chief Officer at Govern Help, and we are a small family support charity based in Govan. We provide a range of services to children and families. For our project, we decided to do a recycling craft project, asking young people within our Breakfast Club service to create climate change themed artwork with alongside their answer to the question of how do you feel about climate change. So our project actually had to be taken down because of COVID, so we had to change, and we then decided to deliver it remotely. So we did the competition through Facebook, and we distributed art packs to the families in the community through our food bank project that we were delivering throughout lockdown last year. So we gave out 58 packs to local families of arts and crafts materials, pens, glue, scissors, all the stuff they would need to be able to make it. But we were asking them to make it out of recycled items from the house. So whatever was in their trash that they could make into something. And so we had 20 entries in total. And we were amazed with the creativity and the messaging that the children came back with. And we held an exhibition in the shop window of a local social enterprise shop to exhibit all the artwork for the children. We gave them prizes for the best ones. So we created a booklet overall that showcases the work that the children completed, but also acts as a kind of guide for other children to be able to complete the same art and craft tasks using the same recycled materials. So in the breakout sessions, we'll have a look at the booklet that the kids made.
Thank you so much, Viv. That's a lovely story. And I think the sense in which you're able to take a creative approach as we transition from so-called normal times to lockdown is really inspiring. And also the way in which 58 packs of arts and crafts materials alongside maybe the food banks as well, so that people are receiving really victuals for body and soul from Govan.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that, Viv. And
You're
we're
welcome.
up next to Maryhill Parish Church. And I think Stuart Matthews is out there. Stuart, over to you, please.
I'm going to get Rebecca to speak for us, if that's okay.
No problem. Hello, Rebecca.
Everyone. Yeah, so I'm Rebecca. I am the young person, I love saying that, the young person that's sort of taking the lead with the project. So don't want to say too much because we actually have a sort of 1-minute trailer some young people have sort of helped create for our project. So if it's possible to share the screen, I think that's the best way to sort of catch everyone up on where we're at.
over next to Rumpus Room, and we have Nadia Rossi. Over to you, Nadia.
Hi there, I'm Nadia Rossi, an artist and co-founder at Rumpus Room, which is an artist-led studio on Govan Hill. The studio is run by artists and hosts a programme of youth-led activity for children, young people and their families living in Govan Hill and the wider communities of Glasgow. The studio is a shared experimental space where children and young people can work independently in collaboration with artists, activists, youth and play workers on art and social action projects they've instigated. So for our project, we created a collaborative magazine called the Daphne Act, which explored the intersecting themes of art, creative protest and climate change, working online with our young activist group, who are a group of 16 to 25-year-olds at Rumpus Room. The content of the magazine was created through a series of online workshops with young people that took place as the pandemic first hit last year. Our project was led and facilitated with two young collaborators who were working with us at Rumpus Room at the time, artist and designer Lucy Grange and writer and activist Rosemary Gary. The workshops included discussions, multisensory experiments in creative writing, experimental drawing, interviewing skills, poster making and collaborative music making. Our workshop provided a safe, supportive and stimulating space to explore creative protest and discuss young people's concerns about the climate emergency in the middle of a global pandemic. And alongside the workshops, Lucy and Rosemary also created a workbook sharing some of the activities, ideas and resources that we were exploring in relation to climate activism, the environment and creative protest in uncertain times. So we'll share our magazine and our resources in the next session, and you can hear from Lucy and Rosemary then as well.
Wow, thank you, Nadia. We've heard today about films, about poems, about a documentary, and now about magazine format as well. So what's wonderful is the variety and diversity of young people's creative responses to the challenges of carbon and climate, and how especially they can gain a sense of agency, which of course is vital at these times. We're going to move on next to South Seeds. I see Lucy's just put on a camera, and I'm over to you, Lucy Gilly.
Hi, thank you very much, Duncan. And our project was very similar to the project that Nadia spoke about, in that South Seeds is an organisation on the high street. We support people to live more sustainable lives. And in the run-up to COP, we really wanted to enable young people to get involved in measuring air pollution, and also sharing their findings through a newspaper. So we didn't really have any links with young people directly, and we put a call out, and we found 5 young people who cycled around with air pollution monitors and collected data, and then we put a newspaper together to share the data that they found, and they contributed to the newspaper, and then we shared that on social media platforms, and it was very, very popular. So that was our project, and we've got Chandler here, who is one of the cyclists collecting the data, and he's going to speak a bit about his experience as well of being involved. Our young people were up to the age of 25, I think.
Thank you so much, Lucy, and look forward to hearing more in the workshops with that project in particular. A great example, I suppose, of what sometimes people call citizen science, to go alongside maybe some of the more artistic approaches, but of course with a creative and artistic result with the newspaper, especially a newspaper that by the sounds of the title holds a bit of a mirror up to the city for some important issues there around air quality. Thanks again, Lucy. And I noticed 1 or 2 people have mentioned an organisation called Lateral North in the chat there, who are planning a particular set of creative interventions by a vacant derelict site just to the west of the Kingston Bridge in the run-up to and during COP. So we'll share a bit more information with that with you on that one in due course. I'm sure they'll be really excited to hear about all these important areas of work. And then last but certainly by no means least, we're going to go on to the Village Storytelling Centre, and I think we have Sarah Rankin out there. Sarah, over to you, please.
Hello, thank you. My name's Sarah Rankin from the Village Storytelling Centre in Pollock. And we got to do a climate change project last year with 6 young people from Pollock. A couple of them are here today. And we had, I think, about 9 or 10, 9 sessions in total. And we got to have 2 face-to-face in that wee glimmer of hope point in August, which was wonderful. And we worked to research climate change, which the group were already so knowledgeable and passionate about. I didn't have to give much input to that at all. They just shared what they thought on everything. And we then worked with artists and filmmakers to create a film. The young people, it was completely young people led, and they created the costume, the masks, the characters, they wrote their scripts, they performed it themselves, and used their voice to show what they believe and what they're passionate about on the climate change issue. So I'll be sharing that film, and we'll maybe get a couple of some feedback from the young people that were in the group as well. So it was just a wonderful experience, and a really special experience to do throughout a pandemic as well, because it was a really good motivator to get meeting online and get those glimmers of hope in person as well. So thank you.
Sarah, thank you so much, and a wonderful, wonderful conclusion to that particular part of the programme with some glimmers of hope, as you said, Sarah, particularly as we begin to look towards maybe coming out of COVID, but also, as I said earlier, addressing the climate emergency. So 8 fantastic stories of creativity and innovation and of passion and commitment from children and young people throughout Glasgow. 8 Glaswegian stories, which I hope we can tell the world about in the run-up to and during COP26, and maybe even share with other young people from around the world in maybe digital media and maybe in person, who knows, as time moves on. You've all been really good and kept to time. We've really saved a bit of time, so that's great, because that means we can now go into the breakout sessions and take a little bit more time to hear more in detail about these wonderful stories. Now back in the room, the main room. I hope you've enjoyed as much as I have the last 2 sessions, the 2 breakout sessions, where you've had an opportunity to hear 4 out of the 8 projects in much greater detail, and certainly whetted my appetite to hear more still, not only the 4, but the other 4 that I didn't get to hear so much about. We're just going to take a short while now for some reflections, particularly from Councillor Anna Richardson, as one of the political leaders for the city, about what we've just heard. I'm not seeing Anna on the screen, but I'm going to assume you're there somewhere. Anna, would you like to say a few words about your reflections? You're there, Anna. Hello.
Thanks very much. I've also been in 2 breakout sessions, the same as everybody else, and my 9-year-old joined me. She ditched homeschool today to watch some of these presentations instead. She's certainly one who takes climate very, very seriously and holds me to account every single day in my own house. And tells me more about recycling than I think even the Glasgow City Council officers tell me. So I'm very conscious of how young people feel about this from my own personal experience, and I thought it was particularly interesting just to have her alongside me to witness some of these projects and what's going on. The couple of films that I've been fortunate to watch today, the one from Brunswick Centre and then the Milton Bank as well. Very interesting, I think, to see the range of ages that these projects have covered. And the seriousness with which young people and children of all ages have really responded to this project brief. I don't think they take it lightly. I don't think it's seen as a flippant thing or a simple thing to fix. And I think that's really exciting. I think it's really heartening in terms of how they will move forward and how they will feel about climate change and the action that they need to take as they move into the roles where they are taking responsibility for the way that society moves. I raised it in one of the breakout rooms, and certainly it's something that's been on my mind a lot throughout, from the climate strikes, right to now, is how much weight perhaps young people are taking on their own shoulders, and whether, I hear of anxiety in young people from very young, almost a powerlessness because they aren't yet the decision makers, although they will be, and thank goodness for that. And how the burden that, as those of us who are in policy making roles, that we have to take that burden from them. We have to empower them to feel that they are heard, that they have a voice, and that they are able to take actions in their everyday lives. But certainly what we don't want is to allow them to have a burden that we're not fixing this, that we're not moving fast enough, and that they're going to move into their sort of 20s and 30s with an even bigger problem to fix. So I think a message that we need to take away from this is that we really have to be getting on with things as fast as we can, and that we are being watched very closely. And if we don't act, then we are adding to the burden of those that are coming after us. And I think that's something we need to take on board. I also heard huge amounts of positivity, huge amounts of desire for concrete change from listening to one of the girls talking about planting a tree, and we should all do that. And I think there's something very symbolic about whether it's making a piece of art that gets a message across, whether it's physically planting something in the ground, or whether, as the Brunswick Centre did, it's holding politicians and other decision makers to account. All of those are tangible actions that we can do every single day. And I really loved seeing all the artwork from Govan, and how those are pieces of art. There's something that was enjoyable, it added to those children's days. And I think the contributors around that were talking about, they've been in a hard place. We've all been locked down, and we've been trying to keep our children busy and engaged throughout that. And that homeschool, you know, has its ups and downs. And for them to have been given a community-based project where they went home and they thought about it and were able to do that work themselves, and to really engage with a topic in a positive way, and then to see those coming together in a, you know, when it was exhibited, I think that was a really, really lovely way to see that positivity, and to be thinking about something out with, as everybody's been saying, oh goodness, today we're in lockdown, or today where the family has money problems, or today, you know, we're not at school, and to be looking wider at, you know, how do we tell the world that we can make things better and we can do better things. So those are the kind of a few snippets in my head, a lot of really strong and important messages from today. And as Duncan said as well, that was only half of it. We've only seen half of the project. How incredible, how rich and diverse this work's been. It's just incredible. So my thanks to all of you who've been involved. What a brilliant morning. I'll pass over, I've said enough. I'll pass back to Duncan.
Anna, thank you so much for your reflections. Really appreciate that, and also the input from your 9-year-olds as well. I mean, how important that is to give a tangible example of where we want to go. Just a few comments from me before I pass on to Russell for some final remarks, particularly on next steps. I mean, following on what Anna was said, I was picking up very much from what people were saying, that transformation of anxiety into hope. And in the words of one of the projects, how to turn panic into power for the young people. And it's not insignificant, therefore, that we found out that this year's Mental Health Awareness Week in May for Scotland will have its theme of nature, because I think that's come up again and again with the children and young people involved in these projects. Another thing in my scribbled notes here I'm looking at that came up was how an abstract thing like climate change can be made tangible, or in the words of one of the projects, tactile. How you can get your hands on something and make that difference and bring back agency in doing so, rather than powerlessness. And just on that final point, I've really, really appreciated hearing today how the power of art to release and unleash people's innate creativity, to give voice to people whose perhaps thoughts have not been heard, or have struggled maybe to find the medium in which to put that voice forward. And that's absolutely vital. And that connects Glasgow to the world, because it's a failure of global democracy and failure of power and how it's distributed throughout the world that we are where we currently find ourselves to be in terms of climate and carbon. And that's something that therefore connects Glaswegian voices to the rest of the world and to COP26 itself. And I'm now going to ask Russell Jones just to say a few more words about next steps. It's important that we do think about that, because this is not a one-off. We don't just walk away from this particular event this morning, enjoyable and inspiring as though it's been, but hopefully a start of something else, something important for Glasgow and for young Glaswegians especially. Russell, over to you.
Thanks, Duncan. There's quite a few next steps, and I just want to also reiterate the fact that I found everything very powerful this morning. Even though I'd seen all of the projects before and their outputs, it was just really incredible to see the work that everybody had done again. The small grants team will be meeting right after this, and also again next week, to discuss how we move forward from this. First off, we will publish all of the outputs on the GCPH website. And just to let you know that our board last week approved in principle our work plan for next year. And in that work plan was an extension to the small grants scheme. So we'll be running it again in the coming year. And the purpose of this is to broaden the voices that have been heard thus far. We also want to consider the long-term role of the projects, both in terms of COP26 and the future opportunities that we may have in the run-up to and during COP26 to showcase the work of the different groups that have happened. One of these, which was mentioned in the chat, is Lateral North, which is a project that's going to be actually taking over some vacant land near the Kingston Bridge, and they are looking for projects to display in this space. And also, I've had conversations with Duncan about showcasing the work during COP26, perhaps in the city chambers or elsewhere as well. Just to let you know, this is not a one-off thing, as Duncan said, and we want to continue to work with the different organizations that have participated in this to make sure that the voices of the children and young people who have participated are definitely heard. We also are reflecting on how the projects can be used to inspire future research within GCPH and also our future engagement. We've been working on different projects related to climate change for several years now, and so this is not something that's new to us, but it's developing and adapting, and particularly in this Sustainable and Inclusive Places program, we're very aware of how important this is to the health and well-being of the population of Glasgow. So we want to consider how we can be inspired by this work and maybe co-produce some research projects, and also to build on the engagement that occurred during this and perhaps utilize the capacity that's built through the different projects. Finally, I would just like to thank Duncan Booker for agreeing to chair the meeting today, Councillor Richardson for being our keynote speaker and reflecting on the events, everyone, all of the different organizations and children and young people that participated in the different projects, the small grants team, you know who you are, I don't think I need to list everyone, and also Carol Frame for organizing all of this, and Sheena Fletcher for helping to organize and tweeting and monitoring the chat and all of that. So that's basically it for me, Duncan. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Russell, and thank you too to you for your contributions today. I'm just going to end with a couple of thoughts. The first is that what Russell said was serious. How do we ensure we can showcase some of this work to ourselves, principally, and to the world, and make sure we hold a mirror up to the big people in the big negotiations during COP26, as I said earlier. So we'll look at doing that in practical ways. And just finally, I mean, one of the quotations that came up from one of the groups was that a child or children shouldn't have to be thinking about endings, but about beginnings at this stage of their lives. But the circumstance which we find as those beginnings, we hope, will emerge from the kind of enthusiasm, commitment, and creativity from the children and young people we've seen. And the other words I'd noted were resilience, kindness, and community. And again, the word kindness comes up. And on that note, it's always worth finishing any meeting. So stay well and keep safe, and we'll look forward to catching up another day. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and take care. Bye-bye.